Welcome to Ohio Airgun Shooter. On today's video, we have the Beretta 92FS from Umarex. It's a 177 caliber CO2 powered airgun. It's non-blowback and is a revolver style repeater. This is the nickel finish version, but to me it looks more kind of like a stainless steel finish almost. Either way, I find it to be a very attractive airgun. It does have a rifled barrel, which you can see here is recessed. Has a manual safety, which is ambidextrous. It's on both sides. The rear sight is adjustable. However, neither the front or rear have any white dots. Grips are made of real wood. They have a really nice grain, and the checkering is it's very nice. Pull this little lever down to access the loading port. It uses these 8-shot rotary magazines. And it shoots in single and double action. This is normally the slide catch, but it's just casted into the lower receiver. This button, which is usually for taking off the slide, is also just casted. Now, this button here, usually the magazine release button, is for accessing the CO2 cartridge compartment. You just push it and the grip just pops off. You just flip this lever down and then you rotate this little thumb screw here up or down to loosen or tighten the CO2 cartridge, and then you just push that lower lever up to pierce it. Now this Beretta 92FS functions exactly the same as my Walther CP88. I mean, mechanically they're identical. The Walther is clearly about an inch shorter, and they function exactly the same. However, they're two very different guns. Now another gun that I have to compare it to is the Beretta 92A1. This is a blowback BB gun. It is also CO2 powered. But one thing that I noticed is this barrel area sits a lot lower on the 92FS, as you can see here. Same platform, but again, two very different guns. Now here's the instruction booklet for the 92FS. Has all your standard literature in it. Maintenance, operation, how to load a magazine, etc. I think it comes in about 3 or 4 different languages. Right here it shows claim velocity of 394 feet per second. I assume that's with lead pellets. However, I don't know if it's in single or double action. Sometimes it varies. But here's the rotary style magazines. They're 8 rounds each. Once again, the Beretta 92FS with this nickel finish and wood grips is a very good looking air gun. Like a good mixture between metal and wood, and might be right for you. I still like wood and blue, but this Beretta and the nickel finish really grabbed my attention, especially because it doesn't have any of the white lettering anywhere on it. For the shooting testing, we'll be using Umarex brand 12 gram CO2 cartridges. Drop a Craftsman pellet gun oil, and then we'll use the Craftsman Premier H&M Barracuda. These are 10.65 grains. These will be the heaviest. They're a heavyweight pellet. And then I'll be using these RWS Hobby. They're a 7 grain flat nose pellet. And then these, I don't know what brand these are. I found these, and they look very old. They're a flat nose. They're either I think Craftsman or Daisy brand by this little case here. I don't even have any idea what their weight is. So what we'll do is take my scale here and we'll weigh a few of them. I've already weighed all these the Hobbies, Premiers, and Barracudas before. They all come in about where they're supposed to be. I think the H&Ms are just a tad under the 10.65 grains that's stated, but the Craftsman Premier seem to be right on. But let me weigh a few of these and see where they're at. .98 grains, so just under 8 grains. Another 7.98. This one's right at 8 grains. So yeah, I would say they're 8 grain pellet. So these are heavier than the RWS Hobbies. So we'll start with the RWS Hobbies, and then we'll use these, and then we'll go to the Craftsman Premier, and then the heavy H&M Barracudas. Now to load these magazines, be sure the indexing teeth face the rear of the gun. And what you do is you just seat your pellets, place your pellets from the back towards the front. Just kind of drop them in. You can just push them the rest of the way in with your finger or thumb. However, this doesn't always seat them properly. You can see the skirts are kind of sticking out a little bit. So I'll just take a little punch, or in this case I have this little plastic stylus that I like to use, and you can kind of feel when they're seated. There's like just a little bit of a little bump, or I don't know, you just kind of feel it, and then you know they're seated and they're just right. This style of airgun magazine, they suggest using a flat nose or dome pellet. We got 8 rounds of each loaded up. The RW's Hobbies, these unknown brand, and then the Crosman Premiers, and then finally the H&N Barracudas. Now this airgun does have a rifle barrel, as mentioned before. Here you can see the rifling. I was very surprised I was able to get the camera to focus good enough for you to see it, but it's very nice rifling. Again, loading the CO2 cartridge is pretty simple. You just flip down that bottom lever, twist this little screw, thumb screw, up or down to tighten or loosen. I usually put a drop of silicone, or in this case some Crosman pellet gun oil, on the tip of the CO2 cartridge before inserting it into the compartments. Now you just use your thumb or finger to tighten the thumb screw up just enough to where it's snug underneath the bottom of the cartridge, like so. And then what you do is just push this little lever up with your hand. You can either do it with or without the grip installed. I usually do it without, so you can hear that little hiss, and which means the CO2 cartridge has been pierced, and now you're ready to load up some pellets. To measure the velocity, I'll be using the X-Radar chronograph, which reads up to 698 feet per second. First up, the RW's Hobby 7-grain flat nose lead pellets. I am shooting indoors, and it's 71 degrees Fahrenheit. For the first shots, I'll be shooting in single action. Very first shot with a freshly pierced CO2 cartridge came in at 434 feet per second. Shot number 2, 442 feet per second. Down 10 to 432 feet per second. And 420 feet per second. Next I'll shoot in double action. 402 feet per second. Down a bit to 396 feet per second, 386 feet per second, and then 388 feet per second. So that was 8 shots in single action, and then another 8 shots with double action. And we did achieve the claimed velocity of 394 feet per second. We actually exceeded that a little bit. Next, I'm going to shoot these either Crossman or Daisy brand flat nose pellets. They came in at 8 grains. Again, I'm going to fire first 4 shots in single action and then the second 4 shots in double action. And this is the same CO2 cartridge. I got a reading of 000. Didn't even read the first shot or the second shot. Still nothing. Me check and just make sure it is firing them. I know for sure that we're not going over 698 feet per second. Hold the chronograph right in front of the muzzle. And we did get one reading of 376 feet per second. Yeah, it's just not reading these flat nose pellets. Keep just getting triple zeros. So I actually did run into this problem before with some Crosman Premier hollow points. So for some reason, certain pellets it just can't read. For the next 2 pellet choices, I'm going to switch out CO2 cartridges. Now here I let the air gun sit for a few minutes to warm back up, because when shooting with CO2 it tends to cool everything down. Next up, the Crosman Premier 10.5 grain domed lead pellets. Everything I'm shooting today is lead. I don't have any alloys that will fit in the magazines. 378 feet per second. That's the first shot off a freshly pierced CO2 cartridge. Second shot came in at 366 feet per second. Down to 346. And down again to 334. So that was 8 shots, 4 in single action and 4 in double action. And even though the numbers did drop, we stayed in the 300 feet per second range. Now on the same CO2 cartridge, I'll be shooting the H&N Barracuda. These are 10.65 grain. They're a dome pellet, and they also have kind of a slight point to them. I'm going to let the Beretta sit for about 5 minutes to let it warm back up, so that we can get more consistent shots with a warmed CO2 cartridge. 322 feet per second with the H&M Barracuda, down to 318 feet per second, 310 feet per second, 306 feet per second, down to 302, and then all the way down to 278 feet per second. And back up to 296, and down a little bit to 284. So with the heavier pellets and the cool down effect of the CO2, the velocity dropped a bit with each shot. Well, I still got the same CO2 cartridge. I'm going to retry these flat nose pellets that are either a Crosman or a Daisy brand, just to see if I can get any kind of reading with the X-Radar chronograph, which still nothing. So for some reason it just can't read these pellets. So I won't even use these for the target testing. The RWS hobbies are pretty similar, and they're already a flat nose pellet, so I'll just stick with those. Now my indoor shooting range is in my basement, and I have approximately about 6.5 yards from where I sit to the target that I have set up down there. So with these two boxes, well, the target itself and then the box behind it, it probably pushes it back towards me probably about another 5 inches, so we'll say about 6 yards to be exact. First up, we'll use the RWS Hobbies. They are a 7-grain flat nose pellet. I will be shooting from a rested position, as you can see here. And the first shots will be in single action only. So this will be 8 rounds with the RWS Hobbies in single action. We'll be aiming at the bottom of the black circle. So I take that and I rest that on top of the front sight blade when I have my correct sight picture. There were some shots to the lower right. I don't know how much of that was me. Next up, the Crosman Premier 10.5 grain dome lead pellet. Again, 8 shots, single action only. Most of those shot a little to the right, but not a bad group. Again, this is only from about 6 yards. A lot of that could be my trigger pull. Next up, the H&M Barracuda, 10.65 grain, domed with a slight point. Eight shots, single action. I've had this air gun for a few months now, and out of the box I haven't adjusted the rear sights at all. This is about the 3rd time that I've shot it. So windage is hasn't been adjusted, so it's mostly it seems to be shooting towards the right. How much of this could be my trigger pull, the differences in pellet weights, or the cooldown effects with the CO2. But we're going to try some RWS Hobbies now in double action. I was really pulling these bad to the right. The trigger was very sticky, so I don't know if I had the pellets seated correctly, but it felt like the magazine was having difficulties indexing. Anyhow, the magazine seemed to be really hanging up bad, so I think I forgot to seat them. Anyways, everything was pulling really hard to the right. Yeah, that was a really bad group. Next up, the Crosman Premier. Again, this will be 8 shots with a double action. I also made sure each of these pellets was seated properly. With the first couple shots, I could definitely feel the difference with the magazine indexing. So there was definitely something going wrong when I was shooting the RWS Hobbies. Even though this little grouping is a bit opened up, they all seem to be shooting actually kind of dead on center, maybe just a hair to the right. Not bad. Almost looks like the constellation of Orion. Next up, the H&N Barracudas. These are the 10.65 grains. Again, this will be double action only. 8 shots. And I did install a fresh CO2 cartridge. that pattern definitely opened up a bit. So it seems like the Craftsman Premier seemed to shoot best in double action. While I have a fresh CO2 cartridge in here, I'm going to retry these RWS Hobbies. Now I went and made sure each pellet was seated properly this time, and I'll see if that makes a difference. Started out a bit low and to the right, but the trigger pull was much smoother. I could definitely feel the difference, and as you can see here, the grouping definitely tightened up a bit. So yeah, there definitely was something going on with that first round of RWS Hobbies and double action. Definitely didn't have them probably seated properly. But here's all the different targets with single and double action. I mean, again, this is only 6.5, well, 6 yards, 6.5 yards indoors. I don't know how much tighter I could get these with practice. Maybe try to stretch it out a little further and see what we could do with that. But I went ahead and inspected each of these magazines. Make sure there's no any burrs or anything that might hang them up when they're trying to rotate and index. But they all seem to be fine. All the teeth seem to be fine. So I think the problem was with that first round of RWS Hobbies, it was, again, I didn't have the pellets properly seated all the way, and either the skirts were probably maybe getting hung up a little bit on the valve port possibly, but seemed to have corrected the problem by seating the pellets. Anyhow, this is the Umarex Beretta 92FS. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe.